And when you look at the period after Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, it's amazing the change in attitude of his team of rivals who previously thought he was this uneducated country bumpkin, the wrong man who'd won the Republican nomination. You have, as I'd mentioned, Seward, who was Lincoln's Secretary of State, arguably his main rival for the nomination. He wept when he heard about Lincoln's assassination. He was just beyond consolable. He said Lincoln was the best and wisest man he'd ever known. The best and wisest man, this country bumpkin from Illinois. Remarkable change. You had Attorney General Bates said Lincoln comes very near being the perfect man. And then Union General Ulysses S. Grant said of Lincoln, he was incontestably the greatest man I ever knew. This is Ulysses S. Grant that, after a few generals that didn't do as well, became the only general that seemed that he could go toe-to-toe with Robert E. Lee of the Confederate Army and beat him. I mean, this is Ulysses S. Grant, one of the heroes of the U.S. Civil War. For him to say that Lincoln was incontestably the greatest man he ever knew, it's just astounding. So really the key to Lincoln was he had this sense of self-confidence, this inner security that meant that he could listen to diverse perspectives without feeling threatened. There was one occasion, and Doris Kearns Goodwin writes about this in her book, in which somebody came up to Lincoln and said, one of your cabinet members said that you're an idiot. So rather than getting offended, Lincoln said, well, basically, thank you for that. I may well be an idiot, but help me understand where in particular that I'm an idiot. So rather than just saying, oh, you're all wrong, what are you thinking? It's like, okay, there might be areas in my life and my presidency where I'm an idiot. Help me understand where it is. It's just he wasn't offended because he wanted to grow and learn. How many leaders, when you call them an idiot, will go, what do you mean, an idiot? I'm not an idiot. They'll get all defensive rather than, you think I'm an idiot? I'd love to understand where, because I'd want to grow and improve. That's basically the subtext of what he's thinking. It's truly remarkable, Lincoln's character and his willingness to do the right thing no matter what. There's one other instance that Doris Kearns Goodwin puts in a book that I really find remarkable. Salmon Chase, as I've mentioned, was Lincoln's Secretary of the Treasury. Of all the members of his cabinet, he gave him undoubtedly the hardest time. He was really a pain in the neck in a lot of ways. In 1864, Chase had some of his supporters basically write very critical things of Abraham Lincoln. So because Chase was hoping to win the Republican nomination for president in 1864. Here we are still in the middle of the U.S. Civil War. You'd think somebody would be a bit loyal and say, look, I might be ambitious, but it's not the time to change horses in the middle of a war. But, Salmon Chase was like, well, in some ways, me first. I think I'm the better man. I've always been the better man. And I'm going to basically use some skullduggery and put the word out that, say bad things about Lincoln. Lincoln was a smart guy. He knew exactly what was happening. He was not naive. He may be secure, but he's not naive. He knew what was happening. Eventually after, threatening to resign on countless occasions after the 83rd time, however many it was, eventually Lincoln accepted it. Despite all this, in December 1864, there is a vacancy for Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So who does Lincoln nominate? He nominates Salmon Chase, the guy that tried to, through back channel skullduggery, get rid of him before as the nominee of the Republican Party before the 1864 election. He nominates him to be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, like the highest honor in the law. Lincoln said he believes that there is not one man in the Union who would make as good a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court as Chase. It's just astounding. One of the things that one of Lincoln's personal secretaries said, sort of executive assistant, if you will, John Nicolai, said of Lincoln, probably no other man than Lincoln would have had the degree of magnanimity to thus forgive and exalt a rival who had so deeply and so unjustifiably intrigued against him. When you talk about character, that is Olympic level of character. To forgive Chase for what he did, we're not talking about 30 years early, we're talking about the 1864 election, and then in December 1864, nominating him as Supreme Court Justice. I mean, what is that, weeks, months after all this intrigue? It went talking years. I'm dumbfounded by that level of character and forgiveness and doing what he felt was the right thing for the country. It's not about him. So it's really awe-inspiring, his character.